Hey folks, JR back for another episode of Echoes of Shannon Street Case File. It's going to be episode 50, A Shotgun Wound, Autopsy of David Jordan Sr. Now before we get started, don't forget, click on that subscribe button. I appreciate y'all's support. Also, you get down in the description, click on that link, follow me on the podcast, Twitter, Facebook, my website, buy you a copy of the book, copy of the documentary.
Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, case number A83-33, autopsy report. Name of decedent, David Jordan Sr., race, black, sex, male, age, 29. County Medical Examiner, J.T. Francisco, M.D., District Attorney General, Honorable Hugh Stanton, Jr. Anatomical diagnosis, number 1, gunshot wound to left arm. Number 2, shotgun wound to left head. Number 3, lacerations of brain. Number 4, aortic and coronary atherosclerosis. Number 5, incision, laceration, right forehead. Cause of death, shotgun wound to head. Narrative of findings. Death was due to a shotgun wound to the head. The blood alcohol was negative. James Spencer Bell, M.D. Autopsy protocol. Autopsy number A83-33. Name, David Jordan Sr. Race, black. Sex, male. Age, 29. Date and hour of autopsy, 1/14/83, 07:45. Pathologist, Drs. Francisco, Bell, and Harlan. Checked by J.T. Francisco, M.D. Date completed, 2/21/83. Final pathological diagnosis. Primary series, 1. Gunshot wound B to left arm, 47.5 inches to heel, 0.30 times 0.22 inches, traversing anterior to posterior, superior to inferior, metal fragment recovered, 47.5 inches to heel in at entrance wound, and larger metal fragment recovered 47 inches to heel in subcutaneous tissue. 2. Shotgun wound A to left head, 62 to 66 inches to heel, 5.10 inch anterior posterior dimensions, 133 by 34/100 inch spurious shotgun pellet wound, 63 inches above heel posterior to major defect, traversing left to right, inferior to superior, slight anterior to posterior through skull and brain. A. Multiple skull fractures, compound and comminuted fragments absent from body. B. Multiple lacerations and maceration of brain. 1. Aspiration of blood. 2. Pulmonary congestion, visceral congestion. Secondary series. Number 1. Aortic and coronary atherosclerosis. 2. Skin scars. 3. Skin eschars. 4. Superficial incision, laceration, right forehead, 62.5 inches to heel. Laboratory findings. Urine alcohol equals trace ethyl. Urine drug screen equals tetrahydrocannabinols positive. Other swabs, THC equals tetrahydrocannabinols negative.
Jordan was 116 pounds, 5'6", showing scars and wounds, shotgun wound to head, deformities, skull fractures, showing bloody fluid in the nose, bloody fluid in the throat area, trachea, larynx. Dr. Bell's mentioning pink fluid, aspiration of blood. All right, he's got pituitary marked. It's mentioning a fracture. Skeletal, showing multiple skull fractures. Brain, shotgun wound. It's also got marked here hemorrhage. My wound chart here got the notations in red. You can see the gunshot wound to the left side of the head and the fairly large defect in the skull. Looking at here another wound chart. This is of the head. You can see on the left side of the head, just in front of the left ear, you can see that large defect in the side of the skull. That's from the shotgun blast. There was only 2 officers had shotguns. That was Ray and McNair. Overview of the head, brain. You can see the multiple skull fractures marked and also the large defect on the left front side of the skull. All right, view of the skull. You can see left front side, large defect caused by the shotgun blast. Diagram of the brain showing the damage to the brain from the left front side and also an overview of the damage to the brain.
Microscopic summary. A shotgun wound to left head. Section of skin reveals focal epithelial denudation, dermal disarray, and hypereosinophilia. Focal dermal coagulation, rare black pigmented material embedded in the dermis, and subepidermal hemorrhage. B. Gunshot wound to left arm. Section of skin reveals focal epidermal absence, dermal coagulation and disarray, and black pigment and purple-black matter embedded in the subepidermal tissues.
Consent to an autopsy upon the body of David Lee Jordan, Sr. Now, I'm not going to read this entire document again. I've read it in its entirety on the first 2 autopsies. All this form is, if you'll remember, is you always want to seek consent from the next of kin to do the autopsy. Of course, if the next of kin say, no, we don't give consent, well, the county and the state of Tennessee are going to do it anyhow, because David Lee Jordan, while he was also a suspect, he's also the victim of a homicide. And they have to do an autopsy to determine whether it's a criminal homicide or a justifiable homicide. In this case here, his wife, Jacqueline, she signed off on it. Looks like Bo Wheeler was the one that brought it to her, and she signed off on it at 3:30 p.m. on January 13, 1983. Recommendation and order for autopsy. This is the form here. This is the one that ultimately counts, which it's saying under Tennessee law, the state of Tennessee can order an autopsy on someone in this particular case because he's a homicide victim. David Lee Jordan. Of course, in the middle of the form, as I've pointed out before, there's a little notice in there that if you're able to obtain consent of next of kin within 24 hours, then attach that permission form to this document, which they obtain permission. Report of investigation by county medical examiner. You can see at the top of the form there on the left, I highlighted in red, David Lee Jordan Sr. was known as Body Charlie 3, C3, prior to them positively identifying his body. Comment, shooting, notification by homicide. You see the wound chart there in the middle section on the right. Bottom left, you see probable cause of death, shotgun wound to the head, manner of death. Now, I didn't point this out before. I don't know if you ever actually looked at it, but you check one of the blocks. You've got accident, suicide, or homicide. As you can see, homicide's been marked On the other side, you got natural, unknown, and pending. Now, I was in homicide for about 18 months. And the way we approach it, I'm assuming all homicide bureaus are this way, but any death is considered a homicide until it's investigated. Then at the bottom, you see the date it was signed off on, 1/14/83, and Dr. Bell signed off on it. All right, this second part of the form, see last seen alive, date 1/13/83, time 03:10 hours. Injuries or illness 1/13/83, 03:10 hours. That's the time they're using when he got shot. Death 1/13/83, 04:40 hours. Of course, the reason there's such a big gap in there is we don't have a pronouncement of death until the medical examiner, Dr. Harlan, got there at 4:40 in the morning. You see discovery 1/13/83 at 3:10, which that's when the police saw him. That's why you see the 03:10 hours for all the suspects. And at the bottom, we've got narrative summary of circumstances surrounding death. Male, black, 29, shot in shootout with Memphis police at 2239 Shannon, along with 6 others. See multiple charts in hostage situation. Certificate of death, David Lee Jordan. See, he was married. Wife, Jacqueline Denise. That looks like Fooch. David was in the Vietnam War. He was a construction worker, self-employed. His father's not listed. Mother's name, Eleanor or Elnora Jordan. J.O. Patterson Funeral Home handled the remains over there on Chelsea. And it's got denoted shotgun wound to head as cause of death. Bottom left down there, it's indicating how he died, the manner of death, which is homicide. 1/13/83, victim was shot. Homicide analysis sheet. Jordan David Lee Sr. This is just a document the Homicide Bureau will put in their files. Now, this one here, it's showing weapon used M16 rifle. Well, that's not correct, at least not according to the medical examiner. He's saying cause of death was a shotgun blast to the head, and looking at that wound pattern, I'd say, yeah, that was probably double-aught buckshot that hit him in the head. Now, that other wound he had and the wound to the back of the left arm or through the left arm, that might have been an M16 round. Anyways, the rest of the information, what little there is, it's just showing the homicide number, and at the bottom they're showing the master file, which that master file, all that refers to is all other report numbers, all other material will all be found under the master file number, which is at 8301132672. Another wound chart. You can see the designation top left, Charlie 3, C3, David Jordan's designation before they properly ID'd the body. Now you can see on this wound chart here, Dr. Bell is showing an entrance wound down on the cheek and then also the large defect top of the skull. Now what that is, the wound in the cheek came from one pellet. Double-aught buckshot's 9 pellets. So one of the pellets evidently struck into the cheek area. Looks like the majority of them, though, hit the skull. That's why you've got that large defect in the head. Okay, folks, that's going to wrap up this episode. Do appreciate y'all tuning in. We'll be back in a few days, work on our next autopsy together. And as always, we'll See you down the road.